Right. Okay, so welcome to day three of our Electronics Hardware Masterclass. This is the seventh session. In this session, we are mostly going to look at, uh, and we are going to look at the project that we want to do along this training, which is the home automation project. And so, yes, I'll first take you through what the project is about, what the objectives are, and the intended purpose of everything. Okay, so afterwards, then we will start with the development. Okay, like I said, every other concept that needs to be explained, I'll do that explanation when it comes up. Okay. All right. So before we get started, any questions on the previous sessions, on any of the topics on the previous sessions?
Okay. Um, yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
So it's regarding with the clearance and the track width.
Okay.
Like yesterday on the previous session, I saw that let's say for the battery, um the the number that you put there for the battery, it was different from the other ones. And I just wanted to know why you changed it from 1 to 0.3 and then you changed it back to 1.
Okay. So you are talking about when I was routing this particular thing yesterday. Okay. All right.
Yes.
So thank you very much for the question. I think it is a very important thing. All right. So quickly, let me bring up the board setup. So when you are routing, KeyCard allows you to set some rules that governs how each signal gets routed, right? So you can actually set as many, we call it net classes. You can actually set a different routing, should I say, properties for each of the signals that you are working with. So over here, I set just a default. A default means that all other traces would be governed by this same routing principle. So I will be guided by this same routing principles, right? So if you look here, the clearance is 1 mm, the track width is 2 mm, via size is 2.5, and via hole is 1 mm. Okay, now, let me probably explain what these things represent. So, for for the clearance, clearance is the space between one. So this thing here, this blue line you see here, is what we call the trace. Physically, they represent the copper connection between the components, right? So any point where there is supposed to be a connection, we do that connection using what we call a trace. Okay, so this is a trace, and this trace, the width, okay, the distance, if I could say, not thickness, thickness would imply height, by the width of this trace is what I have set here as track width. Okay, you can call it trace or you can call it track. So that is 2 mm. So although what you are seeing looks bigger, remember that this has been zoomed, right? So it means that once we are done, this trace is just going to be 2 mm in wide. Okay, you can probably take your ruler and see how 2 mm looks like. Now, if I activate the copper pour that we did yesterday, now you see this black line along the trees. It is actually representing an empty space, okay, which we call the clearance. So this clearance, the thickness of this clearance is what I set as 1 mm, okay. Now, clearance is supposed to be the like I said, the spacing between two routes. So assuming I wanted to route this particular one like this, you see, it means this green highlighting that you are seeing is telling you that there is a collision. Okay, there is not enough space to route that signal. Okay. Now, if I also delete this with the current settings and I want to route it, see what happens. I can't actually close end the trace or the track, because the spacing that the settings that I've set for the track, the tracks doesn't allow. If you look around, you can see there is some shaded region which is like grayish. All right, those grayish is the represent the clearance, then the internal blue. So that is how much. So it means that I need a space of about 3 mm to be able to, in fact, more than 3 mm. So 1 mm to one side of this of the trace, 1 mm to another side. So roughly, I need a space of 4 mm to be able to route this trace, or to be able to route each trace, right? And as it stands, we don't have that. Now, if I pick this ruler tool and even check from here up to here, you see that it is only 3.4 mm. It is not even up to the 4 mm. Is that okay? That means that it's not possible to route that trace. But then, we that is the situation we find ourselves. So what can we do about it? This is something we know we are going to be deliberate about, because this is the setup we want to do. So the only way you can do that is you go back to the setup and then reduce the tray size. So just take it as a hack that we are trying to circumvent the problem, right? We want the spacing to be 1 mm, but if we do that, we can actually route that. So we are trying to just circumvent the situation. So that's why I am setting 0.3 as the clearance. So once I set 0.3, then now the space that I need reduces, right? Now it becomes 2 mm for the track width, then 0.3 on one side, 0.3 on the other side, making a total of 2.6 mm, right? So now if I try to route this signal, everything can connect without any issue. So that was the reason we changed that. Now if I should refill the thing, you see that the spacing, that black line, the thickness of the black lines have reduced, right? Because now we have changed it from the 1 mm to 3 mm. However, this is not what we want the entire thing to be. Okay, we want a 1 mm spacing. So now that we've been able to route the signal that we're having issue with, okay, we can go back and then set the clearance back to the 1 mm as we originally intended. Okay, so look at what happens to the black lines when I set the thing back to 1 mm. Just a second. Why? Okay, so now if once I'm done with what the routes I wanted to do, I can set this back to 1 mm, and look at it. If I press B to refresh, you see that the lines which represent the spacing or the clearance becomes thicker again. Okay, so this particular guy here requires all this amount of space to be routed, like I said. So 4 mm. Okay, but then with this thing, we won't get that 4 mm in here. So that was why we had to do that. I don't know if you are okay.
Yes, I get what you mean now.
Okay. So it was because of the spacing. If we could have done this easily, we wouldn't have gone back to change the clearance. Okay. All right. So any other questions? Any other questions?
Please, I have another one.
Okay.
Show me where the VR size and VR hole, like can you show me on this drawing?
Okay. So a VR. Remember yesterday I said that we can the minimum number of layers you can work on is in KeyCard is 2. Okay, probably let me see if I could. This board, I don't know if you can see it. This board, for instance, can you all see it? This PCB. I showed it to you
Yes.
yesterday. Yes. This PCB here is 4 layers, right? It's a 4 copper layer board. Now, what it means is that there is one layer of copper, another layer of copper, and there is an insulation between them. Okay, so another layer, another layer, another layer, making 4. Is that okay? Now, the current one that we are doing, we can only have two. So the bottom, which you are seeing as blue, and then the top one, making two layers. But then I said that in this project we are just going to work on a single copper layer. Okay, so that means there will be no top layer. Now, in a situation where you have two or more layers, it gets to a point where you have to connect a signal on a top layer to a bottom layer. Is that okay? So for you to be able to do that, that means you have to connect a conductor between those signals on the two layers. Do you understand? Do you get what I'm
Yes.
yes, that conductor
Yes.
that you use to join signals from different layers, that's what we call a via. Okay,
Mm,
so that via can have a size because it is a hole they will have to drill and plate it. So it will have a size. So that size is what I set to be 2.5 mm. Okay, and it also have a hole within it. So that hole is what I said to be 1 mm. Are you okay now?
mm,
Yes,
yeah.
but on this board we cannot have a via because it is just a single layer. Vias are used to connect two layers together. Is that okay?
Mm,
Yeah,
okay. Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome. Please, any other questions? Any other questions? All right. So I think thank you for your questions. Let us get into today's business.